there. We need nothing in the bedrooms, nothing.
Okay. We're streaming in now. How do you spell diaries? D-I-A-R-I-E-S?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, going on. Looks like we're live. Ooh yeah, baby. All right, partner. Come on in here. Mosey on up next to me here. There we go. And get the misses on for once. All right, everybody. Well, good morning and welcome, or good evening, good afternoon, wherever you're joining us from. Robert Linkle, Keagan Linkle, joining you from the TOA bunker here, just outside Sacramento in Shingle Springs, California. And something that we've been fielding tons of questions on are injuries, the injuries we've experienced. What do you do before and after? What kind of exercises are you doing to get yourself ready for surgeries, this and that? And I continue to have the same talks over and over and over again, and thought, why don't we just get on here, answer questions anybody might have, and share our stories a little bit. And between the two of us, we've had 20 something surgeries. I'm most of them, but he's catching up here lately. And we're going to do a couple of these episodes and just kind of share our stories from the side of the individual experiencing the injury to the other individual who helps, care for and take precautions to deal with them through the recovery and so on. So with today's session, we want to look at my hip injuries, my hip replacements. I'm going to share a little bit about the before, the during process, the after, and then Keeg will be able to kind of chime in and discuss the side of having to deal with me and all my injuries and my bullshit that I put up there. If you do have questions, please let me know. We are streaming on Facebook Live, and I will be able to see your questions on here. Let me get. I don't know. Can I see me? We might need your phone. You might need to follow the feed on there for us to see questions, unless they get posted directly to my link. We're going through Zoom because I wanted to show some pictures too, but try it on your end and see.
Sure.
So let's give you a little bit of a recap about my hip injuries and what has occurred. So I was a NCAA hammer thrower at Sac State. I was ranked 14th in the nation. Was a really, very, very passionate about my sport, to the point where when I was throwing the discus in high school and the shot put and learning to throw, as soon as you pop on, just make sure you mute so we don't get any echo. Learning to throw, I had a coach that helped like a little bit here and there, and then I'd see him maybe once a week, but it was all on me is basically the bottom line. And this is in the 90s, so the internet wasn't great. It wasn't super popular. It wasn't even available till like 99, around there, when I was getting out of high school. So you couldn't look up anything to figure out how to train or what to do. You could get into some books here and there. There was like a thrower's journal. There was just a little bit. So I just had to kind of make it up and end up just doing a ton of technically wrong lifts and abusing my body training wise. If other throwers were throwing 25 throws, I'd throw 50. If they were throwing 3 days a week, I'd throw 5 days a week. Like I knew I wasn't athletic enough to keep up with them or to compete. So I just had to train beyond as much as I could and train myself into 40 years of injury and wear and tear and so on. So to fast forward through my career, like my last year at Sac State and moving on to throw for Reebok, trying to make an Olympic team, ended up blowing out my back. That hurt me quite a bit and was pretty much the end of my career. But I had so many back injuries that when you get tired of hinging and bending and rounding at the back, you start to just utilize and abuse your hips more. So without really knowing it, I wouldn't be able to bend over to pick up the hammer or the discus. I would prop it up with my foot and pull it up to me. I'd literally hook the handle of the hammer, which is basically a 16-pound ball with a 41-inch wire and then a handle. I'd hook the handle with my foot and then bring it up. So that, along with all the terrible squatting techniques and a billion reps, just destroyed my hips and my back. And 2008, I had a discectomy to fix my back. And then hip arthroscopies and steroid injections and just everything you could think of between 2008 and 2014. And finally in 2016, it was just, this is it. I couldn't handle it anymore. We had a 3-year-old. And I was pretty miserable. Keagan kind of made a joke the other day that I was kind of an asshole, and that when you're in so much constant pain and discomfort, like unless you've been there, it's very difficult to have people understand and be able to connect with you in the mindset of just, I'm constantly hurting and constantly irritable. It's not like I'm trying to be a jerk to everybody. It just kind of happens.
Patience is short.
Patience is short. Yeah. Especially with a 3-year-old, I was just snappy and zippy and yeah. And so I definitely saw just a drastic decrease in my quality of life and said, hey, we gotta do something. Went and talked to our doctors, and hip replacement was the option. So at 36, had my right hip replaced in April. Rehab went really well. I thought it was a great success and we did good. And then I had the left one done in August and was probably pretty overconfident. It was like, I know exactly what to do and I'm ready for this. And I had a roommate who had the same hip, and I was telling him everything he could do. And, hey, do this and don't do that. The guy actually sent me letters afterwards and thanked me, which was very cool. I was trying not to be like an overwhelming know-it-all, but I wanted him to be successessful,
Rob is the reason why people want their private rooms at the hospital.
That's probably true. Probably true. I was definitely talkative with him, but we had a good time.
Of course.
He wasn't annoyed by me, I don't think, or at least he didn't show it.
Who could be?
Hey. So get the left hip done. I get released to come home, and just telling Keeg, we got this. I know what to do. Just set me down in the room. I had season 2 of Ballers all queued up. I was ready to go. And I watched 2 episodes and went to sit up to go to the bathroom, and my hip dislocated. And I remember being halfway up out of the bed. I'd brought my legs over and I was halfway up out of the bed and I felt it pop out. And I knew instantly I was in trouble. I knew instantly something wasn't right. So I yelled at Keeg, and I don't know if she heard me right away or not. I think Peyton came back first. And
no memory.
It was this a big blur, but I was just I'm stuck here. And she goes, Keeg came back and she goes, well, I don't really know what to do. And so I'm like, we got to call Dan, our physical therapist. So she called Dan.
Poor Dan.
We get Dan on speakerphone, and Dan goes, okay, so where are you now? And I said, well, I'm halfway standing up. I can't straighten up and I can't sit back down. And he goes, you're going to have to sit down and have Keegan hold your leg. And as you sit down, she'll lift up and try to keep you in the same position that you're in now. And we're like, okay. And so our best Riggs and Murtaugh moment, 1, 2, 3, go, or is it 1, 2, 3, go?
Go on 3 or go 1, 2, 3, go.
So I go on 1 or on 3, and she's waiting for 1, 2, 3, go. And so I fall back. She doesn't lift the leg.
Honest, that's the way 1, 2, 3 go is supposed to go.
Probably. And I just, I'm just losing my shit. And Keeg's like, oh my God. And she's lifting my leg and I'm screaming. And what do we hear? Laughter. Dan is laughing on the phone at me. So I'm even more pissed off, right? And so he's yelling internally rotate and pull in, trying to teach me how to relocate my leg. And I'm like, Dan, this isn't working. He goes, you got to call 911. So Keeg calls 911, paramedics come, and they come in one at a time. There's 4 of them. First guy comes around the corner and he goes, whoa, you're a big boy. And he radios for something. Next guy comes in, stops. Whoa, oh man, you're a big guy. This is going to be literally like 3 or 4 of them came in and said the same thing. So they had to board me and like Velcro me down and turn me upright because we had our room was like a left turn to get out of there.
Tight.
Yeah, it was like
879 square foot
a tiny
house.
little halfplex, that we lived in. They couldn't wheel me out, and the guy was like, "Can we knock out the window? Go out the window?" We're like, "No." So they turned me upright.
We just bought these windows.
Yeah, and they get me out onto the little gurney out there, and they're wheeling me into the thing, and I'm having this like my best Randall Cunningham moment, like waving at the crowd, and Keegan's taking pictures. I actually have the pictures of Keagan and I.
Yes,
and I'm like, hit me up with the drugs. Let's, do the sirens. And they're like, nope, we're good. And they just sat there in the slow lane. It took me like 2 hours. It was during rush hour. It was a Friday, and it was like 5 o'clock. So we get into that. This is a very long story. We get into the hospital.
30 minutes. Let's be real.
We get into the
not
hospital.
2 hours. It's a 30-minute drive.
We get into the hospital, and they knock me out. They relocate it. And then they're like, okay, you can go home now. Just be careful, thinking that I did something wrong. And I told them what happened. So the nurse in front of me goes to stand me up, and halfway up, it pops out again. And I tell him it just dislocated, and he goes, no. And oh, you're fine. And he just like pushes me over and shoves me into the chair. And I'm like, I'm yelling. I'm like, it's dislocated. He goes, no, it's not. It's fine. It's fine. You're just hurt. He wheels me out to the car, and he like pulls me up, and he's going to shove me into the car. And I grab the guy and I'm like, I'm like shaking him. I'm telling you. And he goes, fine. And he like throws me back in the chair, and he wheels me back into the room, and they're all in there cleaning it up. And he goes, the doctor's like, why are you back here? And he goes, he says that it's dislocated again. Like totally, not believe it. So then they do the x-ray, and they bring up the x-ray, and the ball's like pointed the other direction, literally pointing the other way. I should bring it up. It would make the story better. And he goes, oh, okay. So they try to relocate it again, pops out again. And then they're like, okay, let's just wait. We'll do a total revision. Well, there's no hotel room. There's no hospital rooms available.
That's how you use hospitals at this point.
And so they put me in the nut ward, literally put me in the psych ward across the street. And I hear people screaming and yelling all night long. It was mayhem.
Not to mention, sorry to make this story longer, but while I'm taking Peyton home, because we had Peyton with us at this point, and it was getting late, Rob's across the hallway from a gentleman who literally dies
right in front of us. Yeah, they didn't have rooms to put this guy got shot, and they brought in and they were doing CPR and everything right next to us, and we're like, shouldn't he be in a room? Like they're doing it in the hallway right next to me, and we watched this guy die.
You did.
I did watch this guy die. Yeah, it was awful. And so then they send me off into this, and they're wheeling me outside. I'm like, why am I outside the hospital? And they bring me into this room, and I hear people yelling, help me. And I'm asking the guy, I'm like, what's up? And he goes, no one's doing it. One guy goes, you're killing me. He's screaming all night long. And I'm like, what are they doing to him in there? They're not doing anything. He's just in there just chilling, like eating pudding and just losing his shit. And so it was the night from hell. And the next morning, my doctor came over.
Another person died.
Yeah. And
I don't mean to laugh. That's not funny. Night. That's not funny. It just adds to the craziness of this.
They're rolling me out, and my doctor comes down, and she goes, what are you doing in here? And I'm like, fuck if I know. Like, I don't know what I'm doing in here. I was pissed. And all of a sudden I was like patient 1, 2, 3. And now she's like, oh, Robert, I'm so sorry. And like, very nice lady. But they ended up putting me in the wrong spot. Obviously, she was so apologetic. Super, super sweet. Took me in first thing in the morning, total revision to my hip. And I was able to go home, and I was just in baby mode then. Like every little thing, I was worried about it popping out again. It felt loose. We had all these issues. So it was quite an experience. With all the things that we could have done, I kept thinking like, what did I do wrong? How did I dislocate this? And after the surgery, the doc showed me the x-rays and the MRIs and all that. And it was just a poor cut placement based on my muscular buildup. As a thrower, you block your left leg and you throw the right side. And I've done that literally a billion times. And so I've built up musculature that my hips don't sit perfectly even when I'm standing or when they're active. But when you're knocked out, everything just sits, right? Everybody can do the splits under anesthesia. So did the surgery, put the cup where it probably would be with anybody else. But with me, when I went to activate my muscle, it turned my hip and it just slid it right out.
Because he's so strong.
Well, it's not really that. It's just a massive imbalance. It's like a huge asymmetry. So She had to readjust the cut placement and I go deeper. And now hips work great. Everything's good. It was just a learning process for her as well. And we found out that another patient of hers had a very similar injury, and same, another revision needed. And so I think she learned from it. We learned from it. And it's a story that we get to tell our people about, in the process. So a couple of things. What did we learn from this, right? What did we learn from going through the process? We learned that dealing with chronic pain is a massive mood kill. It's a point in which I just talked to a gentleman yesterday who's about to have a hip surgery, and he goes, "How do I know when it's time?" And I said, if you're just constantly kind of miserable and everything that you do, you have to think about, how will my hip survive? How will I, going to the grocery store? Can I stay standing long enough? Do I need to ride one of the little carts? Like, where everything that you do in life is being manipulated or changed or influenced by the amount of discomfort you're in, your quality of life is gone. So now it's like, make the change. Do this. Why, at whatever age, right? And we kind of came to the point where, like, do I suffer with this and just be a miserable dick for the next 15 years, wait till I'm 50 and then do it so they can last till I'm 80? Or do we do this now and hopefully be better, which I think I'm better.
Yeah. A lot.
So thanks for saying that. You're like, a little bit. So we learned that just dealing with chronic pain, I don't think is really the solution. Obviously I'm not like have surgery at all costs, but if that becomes the bottom, the last straw, and that's going to be the difference between a good quality of life and not, I'm all for it. But I think you really do have to assess and like manage to that point. Would you agree?
Yes.
What did you learn from the whole hip experience? Do you have anything to?
Rob is the most dramatic individual that I've ever met.
Dramatic.
Long-winded. No. From the whole hip thing, or are we talking about just the
just from let's try to keep it to the hip, not just with all the surgeries. I may exaggerate. I don't know if I'm dramatic.
Let's take a vote. Gosh, I don't know. As an individual myself, probably patience and understanding, and that there are moments in life where you're not going to understand, that you have to take it for not take it for what the person says, but like the idea of putting yourself in somebody's shoes just isn't going to happen.
Yeah.
It's just, there's nothing I could have done to
no matter how I explained it or what I did.
Yeah. And it's like, you can be like, oh, I understand or whatever, but it's not something that you really truly can understand, and that you have to choose your words wisely, choose your moment wisely, and be kind with your frustrations, and that you're going to have frustrations, and that's okay, and that he's going to have frustrations, and that's okay, but how you communicate those frustrations so that they both understand. It's when you're already in pain and agitated and irritated, and then somebody's getting irritated because you're irritated, for them to yell at you and to blow up doesn't help you, but it also is important for you to understand that the other person's getting irritated too. And so I think that communication is one of the biggest things that we learned through all of your surgeries, is that, and then probably why I think we're good communicators today, to the point, probably to fault at some points, but like, and just being honest, is that you have to be honest in those moments to fully understand everybody, but that communication is key in all of it.
With each surgery, we got better at this, to the point where Key was the last one to have a surgery, and it was pretty smooth. I mean, as far as like,
excellent patient.
You are, and not dramatic at all. But like, we didn't really have any issues. That you learn to anticipate and try to do all the little things that will really make them comfortable and help them feel like they're not a burden. That's also a very big thing, a big issue. She's a rock star, and I'll tell you that. I'm not just saying it. I've said it in every presentation that I've given. Like, the other person is. It's not just one thing to be like, hey, can you get me a sandwich, and they help you out. She went to appointments with me. She went to the class with me. She asked questions. She was as aggravated as I was leaving that class, going, well, that was kind of a waste of time. You should be teaching it. Like, she was such a good partner. She was in every appointment. When she couldn't come to an appointment, she wrote me a list of questions to make sure I asked from her point too, of like, how much can she help me in pulling me up? How, you know what I mean? It was just, it made the whole process, because when you don't always think of everything yourself, it's nice to have the other person's perspective and thought process going with you. And a lot of times I'll hear something and either interpret it different than what the person means, and she'll be able to clear it up or add or contribute or vice versa. Like, it's really important to have that other person. And the patients, the patients were reading the comments. Jeff, we're doing good. This is very good.
I am the moderator.
You are the moderator. The patients and all that was really a big one, because my first surgery was a back surgery where I had to lay down for like 3 days, and Keeg pretty much had to do everything for me. And in some of these positions, not to get too graphic, but it's like she has to bathe me, she has to help me go to the bathroom. Like, those are situations you got to be really comfortable with that other person being around you, and
the other person has to be comfortable with you, because if I was like, oh, this is
yeah.
But I'm like, whatever, bend over.
Yep.
You know, like, get it done.
She went in.
You know, it's just
Different surgery, but when I had my lung removed, that surgery was just, I was in ICU for like 3 days, and I was in the hospital for 2 months on and off, and like it was bad. And she had to move my arms for me. She had to clean my entire body. And you were in CNA school and just graduated through that and was maybe pursuing this as a career, so had experience doing this, and just went into like work mode and just took care of me. You know, like it's a blessing, the support that you get just from one other person, but family, everybody else that's there, the meals that come in, that whole kind of thing is awesome. Any of you out there that are supporting someone having a surgery, the meals are legit. Like, that helps so much to have meals delivered where the other person doesn't have to cook or go out. That was really big. A couple of our surgeries, having the kids go stay with our in-laws, or my in-laws, and to have them gone even for just a day or two, just so I can come home to silence. You could come home to silence and just relax and like just try to get the ball rolling again to get healthy.
Real quick, Joey asked about your structural damage prior to your replacement.
Yeah,
structural damage.
The structural damage, I had severe arthritis in both. Both labrums were gone, were literally worn away, rubbed away, gone. I had bone spurs and calcium deposits that had grown on both sides of the acetabular socket to where my hip basically had about 30 degrees of rotation. Massively impaired. I could not straighten up all the way, sit down all the way. Squatting, lifting, training was completely out of the out of the question. Just pretty much everything other than having a fractured femoral head, I had it. So when they went in there to do an arthroscopy, they're like, we're going to clean up the labrum. And then when I woke up, they're like, you didn't have any labrum to clean up. Like, we had to just remove the chunks that were left. And then they can do like a little microfiber drilling into the acetabular socket that oozes this like bony, plasmatic, oozy kind of stuff that creates like a false labrum for a little while. That bought me about 6 months, of comfort, and then it all started over again. So it was pretty severe, And I know, Joe, you've mentioned a few times that you've been dealing with some similar injuries and some stuff. I'm always happy to chat with you if you want to talk about that. So those are the things that we've learned. What would we do different? Is there anything that you would do differently specifically with the hip? I mean, obviously I wouldn't have mine dislocate, but that wasn't a...
Yeah, I would have gone on 3.
I would have gone on 3. More communication. Maybe I should have gone on...
Yeah. Anything I would have done differently?
I mean, we didn't really have anything that was drastic or dramatic that put us back. The rehab every day was great. Being outside, we had a neighborhood we could walk in, and Keeg would come out and kind of spot me, and I'd walk up 3 or 4 houses and then come back. And then I would use my cane, and I'd walk up a couple houses and come back. And, her support and being there. And eventually I got independent. I could do it on my own. Like, all that was pretty successful, pretty simple. Like, I don't really think there was anything that I should, like, man, we really should have done blank.
Yeah. Well, I think that, and if anybody, most of you on here know Rob, is that he doesn't do anything half-assed. He does everything full to the best of his absolute knowledge and ability. And so rehab was done at a level that most people, almost like 99% of the other people will not do. And that is really what set you up for such success as far as functionality goes afterwards. And I know that you weren't here in your programming at the time, but something that I feel like has changed drastically is the way that you train now versus then. One of the things that I think that's important to always remember is that after a surgery, after this, you're not going to be able to jump right back the way you trained before. And that every time, he stalled out, he always likes to, say he wasted his 30s or whatever, his training, he didn't have time. Like he would stall out. It's like he would start being like, I really want to start training again. And he would start doing what he did, which is basically what led him to these injuries. And just really, again, 100% out there doing it. And so that would set him back. And so the way that you program and you train now and the different types of progressive resistance that you do now has allowed you to get where you are and, drop 30 plus pounds, full squats, mobility that he didn't even reach right after with physical therapy and such, the mobility that he has now. So I would say that the one thing we could have done better, which hindsight's 2020, is that adapting your training and being kind to yourself in there, that it's not about going back and training the way you are. It's about regaining that function, and that training to get that function may look differently than it did before.
As simple as it sounds, I did not implement my own training practices on myself. Like what I would have done with a client, I didn't do myself because I still looked at me as the hammer thrower, right? That I need to go back and train that way. So finally the ego had to stop and just be like, treat you like a client. And when I started doing that, things took off. That was, we should have done that 4 years ago. That's a very good point. What did we nail? Like, what did we do? What did we do that was just like, we really did this well? I mean, I was very committed to PT. There wasn't an hour that went by and a rep that wasn't asked to be done that I didn't do. Like that I'm very proud of. And, I feel really good about. I think your level of support on your end with every surgery was just fantastic. I couldn't ask for you to do a better job. I would tell you too. I wouldn't just say no. Yeah.
It's part of that good communication.
So I think that was solid. We started in a position when we met each other, though we're 2.5 years apart or 3 years apart, we started in a position as a coach and an athlete. So that established a relationship where I could be critical or I could suggest strategy.
Dominant.
No, or I could just I could be like, no, you got to do it like this. And so when people be like, I don't know how you can work with your wife, train your wife, this and that. We started with that relationship. So it's just
I always retort that I wouldn't trade with anyone else.
Yeah.
Like I would, I wouldn't trust anyone else. Like I think that, and also starting from that relationship point of, when you're just like an intelligent, if you were like a total schmuck coach, number one, we wouldn't be married. But secondly, I'd be like, I need you need another profession.
Yep. So thanks for your confidence.
I said I do have confidence. If I didn't, I wouldn't train with you.
I have you. We see what Jeff just said there.
Oh.
And so not to have this go on forever, but because I do enjoy telling the stories. Something that, what did he say?
So he's asking, if you could have done something different to prevent the need for surgery, would you have? And
oh boy, knowing what I know now, hell yeah, I would have done a lot different.
But I mean, you would have trained differently, but the commitment level to your hammer throwing, the commitment level to trying to pursuing the Olympics, being 14 feet away from that deadline, you would not have backed off training at all.
No.
But if you had a coach starting freshman year in college, then yes, the things could have progressed differently. But it would have taken to do anything differently to go way back in time. But the commitment, but the question is that
I wouldn't be the trainer I am now.
Yeah.
Or
so
be
would
teaching
you?
what I
So
teach.
would you actually go back and change any of that?
Probably not. No. I know I wouldn't. I mean, all those experiences have helped me become who I am and how I do it now, because I wouldn't be able to relate with people the way that I do or connect or have the thought process I have when it comes to our programming. I'd probably still be in that strength coach mindset for the power-based athlete, where now I can look at a strength coach, still a mindset, but for the power-based aging adult, right? It's still our philosophies and strategies. I'm still strength and conditioning based in mindset, but having come through this process, still going through a lot of it, you find different ways to achieve the same strategies, the same, researched outcome that we know we can get, but there's a very different way to do it with an injured individual or an aging, population.
And then also to follow up on the last part of his question, prior to your surgeries, there was a ton of stuff that you did prior to the arthroscopies and prior to replacement till you got to that point. That getting to the replacement was the enough is enough. I am done. I'm doing this. It was not a, well, I'm going to need them. I guess I'll do it now kind of moment. That was a last resort. In that there's a ton of stuff you can do leading up to that to prevent that. And in that regard,
we did
like
so
thinking
much.
of one of our clients, she was told she needed knee replacements years ago and still doesn't have them because of all the
14 years
training
ago.
of the training that she's done. So yes, Jeff, like, leading up to that moment that the surgery was indeed its last resort, there's plenty that can be done prior to that to prolong or even reverse somebody saying that they need a replacement.
For sure, yeah. From rehab strategies to therapy, to different strategies of resistance training and such too. I mean, I did cortisone injections. We went floating, acupuncture, acupressure, never did the needling.
Do you think there was
there were a lot of things that for years that we tried with different practices.
Do you think there was any training you could have done that you maybe implement now that you could have done before that would have prolonged your hip replacements, or were your hips just so far gone at that point that it was really, there wasn't anything you could have been doing?
Really, the big thing that I missed is I just lumped in glute and hip training as legs. And so I really never trained glutes. They just got hit in the mindset of well, when I squat, I'm using my butt. When I hinge, I'm using my butt. But to specifically target it has been a whole different thing. That's something I look at all my clients and I'm like, abduction strength, extension strength, adductors, building the hip girdle, you know what I mean? That whole area, that was something I didn't address at all or even think of. So that would be that is a huge target area for us with our clients. And you ask our clients, we do 100 bridges a day minimum. We do mini band stuff with every single warm up. That's a priority, is to make sure that area is addressed every day. So I don't want my clients to get to this point,
Jeff says, we are in a field that others correlate with empathy, but living in it has made your mind open to what others aren't always thinking.
Yeah, well said. Coming from a man who's had a lot of physical limitations and huge challenges, and not to tell Jeff's story, but Jeff probably shouldn't be alive anymore if I'm remembering that story correctly. I know I am, and so it's a blessing to have him on here commenting, and that's what he's talking about. Not everybody can understand and connect to that level. But
and at the beginning of your training, you would say that you didn't.
No, for sure. You just can't.
You were training your clients like they were hammer throwers.
For sure. Yeah, I had no idea. Nobody taught me. That's why and how TOA came about. Is there's nobody, we have some good teachers out there, but there's nobody going, start here, do all this and implement that. That's why we built this, is because we want to answer that question for people,
and cut out the 15 years of learning that it took you.
Yeah. And be like, now throw yourself down the steps, hurt your hip, now rehab it, now you get it. Let me just give you the chart.
We just go around with lead pipes smacking people when they come over.
Keagan, everybody. Yep. All right. Questions? If anybody has any questions or comments, feel free to throw them up there. Jeff, I love you, man. I know we don't get to see each other all that much, but I love you, buddy. You and I have both been in very similar cancer-based situations, and I'm very happy you're still around. So I love you, man. Any other questions, anything, feel free to throw it up on there. We're happy to do that. We were going to talk, you start talking about specific exercises and this and that. That's not really what the diaries were about. It's more about the experience, sharing what we went through and offering some advice in areas that are off the charts of program design, that are off the charts of movement assessment, We want to be able to
humor. We didn't actually talk a whole lot about humor.
That's such a big one.
Key.
That's such a big one.
Key. Taking things with a small grain of salt and always just
every time
the irony,
surgery.
Throwing out something that is, you can't be afraid to be inappropriate. I feel like there are some jokes that are inappropriate and yet they're really funny. And in a moment that's dire of seriousness, throwing out one of those inappropriate jokes is like gold.
And we're really good at that.
We're really good at
we
that.
were really good at making other people uncomfortable. So one of the best moments I have, and we got a picture of it. I'm getting a bronchoscopy to have my lung checked to see if I have a tumor in it, which we find out in a minute we do. And so this nurse brings in.
I don't. Like that, right? Like inappropriate. You're the one with cancer.
You're the one who's possibly going to die. So the nurse, I'm going to have a pen here. The nurse comes over with these. Oh, thanks. With these Q-tips, these Q-tips that are at least that long. Okay. And it's got all this huge plug of numbing gel.
If anybody's had a COVID swab, this is where they
very
go.
Similar. And so this thing goes in my nose all the way back to the back of tickling.
It doesn't actually go like that. It goes up.
Yeah.
It goes up into the sinuses.
But it was in the back of my throat. And she had to leave them in there for like 10 minutes. And so I got both of them in there and I got these things sticking out and I'm pretending I'm Dracula. And it was 10 minutes of hilarity based on a super uncomfortable moment. And the nurse even looked at us and she's like, what are you guys on? Like, why? Like, no one enjoys this process. Yeah. You're here to see if you have cancer or not, right? And then even when we found out, nobody really told us. We just kind of overheard. And then we were ushered out. Like on the way out, you said you made some crack, I
said that I know that it sucks that you have cancer. That was pretty fucking cool.
Because I was awake to watch it and see it all.
And I was sitting in the room watching the camera go up and seeing the inside of the lung and seeing the tumor, which again sucks.
Biology major.
From a science standpoint, I was like, what? Like wide-eyed and looking at it, identifying everything that I could. Like it was
just
a really
as we
cool
sit
experience.
Here with this screen, that's basically what we had. And as he was going in there, we could look over and you could see it on the screen. And he's here's the lobe, that's a tumor. And then they're like, carcinoid something, and walked away. And the lady goes, honey, you got cancer, and just walked away. That's how we found out. Remember? She totally said it like, honey, you got cancer, and just walked away. And we were both like, what did she just say? And so I'm trying not to cry. Anyway, we're getting into this is our next episode. But
there's more.
Yeah, there's more to come. I've had 13 of these, so we get to go through every time. No, I'm kidding. Anyhow.
No, but even also that with the humor thing too. Like there's always a moment with every surgery, with everything that we do, when we go in and something for us seems dire. It seems awful. It seems the worst that it could possibly be. And at that moment, we see something that is much worse.
Wow, that's such a good point.
Every time that we go in, and it's a really great perspective. It's like the universe is putting that perspective out there. There's a man without legs in a wheelchair being wheeled out right after he found out he had cancer. And it's like, well, shit, it could be worse.
Guys,
the guy dies in the emergency room while you have your
hip replaced or hip dislocation.
It could be worse. Like every single time, there was something else that put us in perspective with the universe of what is the terrible things that are happening and how it's not that bad.
It's not that bad.
Yeah, he's got a huge scar, his lat's cut in half. It's taken him 10 years to finally feel athletic and get back going again. But he's been functional. He's been here. He's been learning. He's been engaging. We have children. We have a great life. Like things can always be so much worse that no matter where you are and what's happening, it's like it always put it in perspective for us. And that was really, really good. And it's something to always remember as well, is that mindset, that attitude, that positivity that you can bring to a terrible situation is what's going to get you through it, and is what's going to get you through it with ease, without the wrinkles added, without the ulcers created, without all these stressful things that can create, and you can end up getting second nature from all these things, depression, all these things that you're going to go through small bouts of. But as long as you have that mindset of our life is pretty friggin' phenomenal. And we just closed a business 4 months ago, and our life is pretty friggin' phenomenal. It could be so much worse that it's good. Like that mindset is everything in life, everything, and has been everything in every single one of these surgeries, yours and mine.
Yeah, 100%.
Not to jump the gun about all the benefits that I got from my surgeries. I'm sure that's in episode 12 or whatever. But
we'll do that next time so I can poke and prod you. But yeah, you're totally right. It's really good.
It's huge.
Yeah, mindset and humor. I'm so glad you brought it up.
Yeah, how did we forget it?
I know it. And that's
why you have me.
I specifically remember coming out of the hospital thinking like, don't cry. And then we saw that guy coming in with no legs on the gurney, and I was like, okay, this is survivable. That guy's not going to walk on his own legs again.
Yeah.
You know, like you're totally right. Anyway, it
I'm
sounds
sure-
like we're in like a war zone where we live, where we see all these guys dying around us. Like it's just downtown Sacramento. I didn't think it was that bad, but yeah. Anyway, all right. Hope you guys enjoyed this. A little bit different than we normally do, but I want to do it. I think it's really good information to share. Maybe our kids watch this episode in a couple of years and learn to appreciate it more, because now they're just like, whatever, Dad's got all these injuries. Yeah, you never know. That is kind of the beauty of Facebook, is that we're documenting our lives. We're making little documentaries here as we go along. You know, pretty cool. Anyway, all right, gang. Were there any other questions, or was that all good?
Catch up with you.
Okay, cool. All right, everybody, take care of yourselves. We appreciate you. Hope you enjoyed it. And I don't know when we'll do this again. Maybe next week after, something like that. But let us know what you think. And signing off. Bye, guys.